The year has just started, but I've already decided what I'm going to drink in 2025. Well, there's still room for some spontaneous discoveries, but I recently went through my cellar and selected the bottles that I want to, have to, need to open this year. So let me take you through this lineup to explain to you which wines I want to explore in 2025 and why I think it is time to pop those corks. Let's go. Two questions people often ask me. Number one, do you collect wine? Yes, what do you think is this? I'm sitting in the middle of my wine collection. And question number two, how many bottles do you have in your collection? The answer to the second question is much more difficult because I've kind of lost track, but I'm definitely sure that I have more than 1,000 bottles sitting in my cellar. So to be honest, it's between 1,000 and 2,000 bottles of wine. So I have a lot of wine, and I still think I'm like in the beginning, or at least in the first half of my wine drinking, wine collecting career. So yeah, I have a problem. As soon as you have so many bottles of wine, it starts getting difficult to keep track of them all. And it also gets more and more difficult to see myself drinking all of those wines. I mean, I'm just at the beginning of my wine collecting career, I think. And I already don't really know whether I can drink all of this. But every year I try to go through all of those shelves and identify the wines that I want to open or need to open. As we all know, wine can age, but at some point it's going to decline. And well, I try to catch as many bottles as possible before they go downhill. So let's go through the wines that I want to taste in 2025. Shall we? So the first three wines are all made using the same grape variety, Riesling. And even though I know a lot about Riesling, I think, there's still so much more to discover and so much more to enjoy. So I picked those three bottles for different reasons. The first one is the 2023 Keller Riesling von der Fels from Rheinhessen in Germany. The Keller winery produces many really amazing wines, and I recently started buying their wines for my personal cellar. I purchased some wines that are definitely more age-worthy, that should be kept for a long time before I open them. And I bought some of those wines here that are more entry-level and that I want to start enjoying now. If you want to understand the wines of a certain winery in more detail, it makes a lot of sense to buy more than one bottle of a given wine and then explore the development of that wine across years. So I'm going to open the first bottle of this year and the next bottle maybe next year or in 2 years, and so on and so forth, to see how it develops over time. I mean, this is more of an entry-level wine, so I'm guessing that it might already be ready now, but I'm pretty sure that it will keep for a few years. And yeah, this is going to be fun to look back on my notes in a few years to see how I judged that wine in the beginning, after a few years, and towards the end of its wine drinking window. The next one is the 2020 Hermann J. Wiemer Flower Day Riesling from New York State. In my Wines of 2024 video, I said that I'm going to taste more wines from New York, and I definitely am going to taste more wines from New York State. I tasted this wine recently because I was preparing for a masterclass, and I had to purchase another bottle of that just to taste it again because I was quite impressed. I think for most people, Riesling and New York State don't go hand in hand yet, but I think the grape variety has a lot of potential in New York. And yeah, this is just delicious. And I tasted so many more really great Rieslings from New York State. So I want to explore more what Riesling does on the East Coast of the United States or in many other places as well. One of those other places is the Alsace, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I really want to taste this bottle, the 2008 Cuvée Frederic Emile from Trimbach, which is one of the top wineries in Alsace. Trimbach is one of those wineries that is able to perform really well at the entry level, or not at the very entry level, but at a more affordable range. but can also produce some of the best wines in the region. And I really think the Cuvee Frederic Emile is one of the most outstanding wines in Alsace. They also produce the Clos Saint-Dune, which is more expensive and also maybe a little bit more famous. But I actually really love this wine because it's so delicate, refreshing, deep, and really age-worthy. And this is 2008, so it's going to be, how much? 17 years this year. And I think that's probably a great time to pop the cork. However, I don't think that I have to open this year, but I want to. And luckily, I still have some bottles of this in my cellar for the future, you know. I'm staying in the Alsace region for the next wine, as this is the 2013 Altenberg de Bergheim from Marcel Deiss. I tasted the wines from Marcel Deiss a long time ago because I had heard of them and I went to see him at a tasting. He wasn't there anymore. No one was there at the stand, so I just started pouring myself some of the wines and I really loved them. But back then I didn't quite have the knowledge to really appreciate them. But I came back to them a lot of times over the years and I really do like them. They're kind of odd and special and wild and different. I mean, this wine is a blend of many different grape varieties, including Riesling, Gewürztraminer and Pinot Gris. But the blend doesn't take place in the winery. Instead, the vineyard is actually co-planted. So you have different vines growing next to each other, producing their fruit. And at some point, everything is just harvested all together and then processed at the winery. So instead of blending different base wines, they actually blend different bunches and just kind of create this really weird, harmonious, wonderful cuvee. Historically, this was the way people made wine. They didn't purchase vines that had those special characteristics. They just planted whatever they could get, and sometimes they just mixed up different grape varieties, which wasn't necessarily such a bad idea. If you have a monoculture of one type of vine, diseases might spread more quickly. You might have issues with frost more frequently because everything just kind of happens at the same time. If you have different grape varieties planted in the same vineyards, diseases might not spread as easily because different vines have different thresholds of protection against certain diseases, fungal diseases or virus diseases. So there is some logic behind it. But in the end, what really counts is that I know that this is a delicious wine and I really want to open it. And I think it's now kind of getting ready. I mean, it's not a wine that you should drink early on. It's now 12 years old, so I think it's time. So next up, we have this, the 2021 Villa Maria Seaspray Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough in New Zealand. I used to live and work in New Zealand, so I have a personal connection to the country's wines, but I wasn't always very excited about Sauvignon Blanc from Marlborough. The category is super successful and it kind of felt like for a period winemakers were just focusing on making money selling that wine instead of producing something really interesting. And I think that has changed over the last years. Nowadays, more and more producers are really digging into the terroir in New Zealand, trying to figure out how to transport site-specific characteristics into the bottle. This wine from the Seaspray vineyard is a good example of that. The vineyard is located right on the Pacific, so you get lots of that Pacific influence, the cold water, the sea spray that kind of brings the saltiness into the vineyard. And I was really fascinated by it when I tasted for the first time, but I also wanted to find out how it ages. Sauvignon Blanc doesn't necessarily have the reputation for producing age-worthy wines, but I recently discovered that that's not true. I mean, you can age Sauvignon and it can actually get more exciting and more interesting. It's not the most age-worthy wine, but it is a wine that can age if it's good Sauvignon Blanc. So I'm going to pop the cork, or rather screw the cap this year to find out whether this maybe has more of that saltiness, more of that sea spray influence or not. Next up, we have this, the 2021 Sauska Furmint from Hungary. I really want to dive deeper into Furmint. So I'm going to taste many different Furmints, not just this one, even though this is a very good example. And I also want to explore more of the rest of Hungary, trying their red wines and other white grape varieties in order to get a real understanding of what Hungary has to offer. I'm going to run a bunch of different seminars for Wines of Hungary this year, so I really need to be on top of my game. But that's really what I love, like digging deep into a country, learning everything I can in order to communicate that on to you guys or the people sitting in the audience. Furmint is a grape variety with lots of potential. I think you can make a big range of different styles, from dry to sweet, from sparkling to oak aged, and it just has that beautiful acidity. It's fresh and vibrant and really, really interesting. So I think as winemakers are focusing more on quality, they're producing more wines that express something different, something that might be missing in the wine world right now. I only want quality when it comes to wine and the clothes I wear. So let's talk about the sponsor of this video, Tailor Store. People, just like bottles of wine, come in many different shapes and sizes. I'm tall and I have long arms, so many standard shirts do not fit me. That's why I order my shirts at tailorstore.com. Your solution if you do not want to settle for off the rack. The shirts are made to order for you after you answer a few simple questions, and they're quickly shipped to your home, no matter whether you live in Albania or Vietnam. If you're not happy with the fit, Tailor Store will remake your order until it's exactly how you want it. I've been wearing their shirts for months now and I really enjoy them. They keep their shape and are easy to iron. It is clear that the good people at Tailor Store know exactly what they are doing. They've been in business for more than 20 years and they've accumulated more than 300,000 happy customers. So head over to Tailor Store using my customized link in the description to get 25% off of your first order, or 20% off if you're a returning customer. Thank you to Tailor Store for sponsoring this video, and now let's get back into the wines. The next two wines represent a category that I definitely want to explore more because I was fascinated by the wines that I tasted last year from that category, and that is Spanish white wines. The first wine is the 2018 Bodegas Cotta 45 Ube de Ubarima Paganilla. Olé. So this is an unfortified wine from the region where sherry is being produced. You know I love sherry. I know many people don't like sherry, but this is a category that is developing more and more quickly and is producing really exciting, interesting wines. So this is 11% of alcohol. It also has this yeasty, kind of briny character that sherry oftentimes has, but yet not the same alcohol level, not the same intensity and richness. This is more light and refreshing. And this is just one example of the great white wines that are produced in Spain. You know, I love white Rioja. I was blown away by some of the white Riojas I tasted last year. But another style that I really loved was this. This is the 2022 Dominio de Atauta Abio Mayor, so this is the grape variety from the region Ribera del Duero. Most of you know that Ribera del Duero produces great red wines, but did you also know that it produces great white wines? I mean, if you watch my video on Ribera del Duero, you might already know that, but I really loved Abio Mayor. This was one of the best ones, so I purchased a few for me personally. But yeah, I mean, that region obviously produces great red wines, but those whites, they really stuck with me. Again, this is a complex, refreshing, really vibrant white wine made in high altitude vineyards. And yeah, something really different to many white wines from other places in the world. I find it fascinating that people associate Spain with red wine, but the whites, dude. The whites. Of course, there's Albarino on the Atlantic coast, which can produce beautiful, really exciting wines. But there's also Godello in Bierzo, for example, that can produce really deep and concentrated and multi-layered wines. Verdejo is often associated with those light Sauvignon-esque wines from Rueda, but there are also gnarly old 100-year-old Verdejo wines that can produce really deep and complex whites. And the greatest thing about the white wines from Spain is that they are still really affordable. Even the best ones are still affordable. Another category that is great value for money is German Chardonnay. And this is a very good example of a delicious German Chardonnay. This is the 2022 Kalkofen Chardonnay from Lichty and Astro in the Fels. I tasted this wine using my Cora Vin for a masterclass because I had to select the right wines for the masterclass. This wine actually didn't make the cut, but I still really enjoyed it. I used their red wine for that same masterclass, so I couldn't use this as well. But this, I'm definitely going to open it really soon. I mean, I often use Cora Vin in order to taste wines because I get lots of samples sent to my office and I don't want to open them all. Sometimes I need to revisit the wines, and this just helps me make sure that the wine is still in good condition if I have to revisit it 2 weeks later. The wines usually keep for a long time after you take out some of the wine, but yeah, I'll find an opportunity in the not too distant future. Chardonnay as a grape variety was not allowed to be used in Germany until the 1990s. So you couldn't make a German Qualitätswein using Chardonnay. Nowadays, you are allowed to do it. And over the last few decades, winemakers really learned a lot about producing great Chardonnay. And I think this is the time to taste German Chardonnay. Some of them are really, really good. I mean, there's also a lot of bad stuff, but the good wines are really good. And of course, if you compare them to the best Chardonnays from most other countries, especially from Burgundy, they are still fairly cheap. So let's move on to rosé wine. I know this doesn't look like a rosé wine, but it's a special rosé wine. This is the 2019 Clos-Chibon Thibouraine from the Provence, and it's one of the most exciting rosés there is. I also have to say I really like the fact that they are not using a clear glass bottle. Instead, they have this brown glass bottle which protects the wine from sunlight. I talked about sunstrike in a video roughly a year ago, but that's a massive issue in the wine world that people are not looking into. They are just using this traditional bottle that really helps make sure that the wine can age. And you might have wondered what he's talking about, a 2019 rosé that he wants to drink this year. This wine actually is designed to be aged, so they can keep for decades even. I don't like to keep them for too long, but 6 years is probably exactly the right time frame to age this rosé. When this wine ages, it loses its primary fruit character, but it develops those lightly stewy, kind of dried fruit notes that can be absolutely delicious. There's also a little bit of flowery dimension to the wine, so I really like to age this rosé. While most rosés are not really made to be aged, this is. The next wine I'm definitely going to open this year is the 2020 Ochota Barrels Grenache Fungazi from McLaren Vale in Australia. I only became aware of this winery when the founder, Taras, died. He was the bass player on different punk rock bands and then studied enology, worked at different wineries and set up this winery. When he died, lots of people posted stuff about him on social media, and I was kind of surprised that I've never heard of that winery before. So I ordered some bottles. I think this is one of the last vintages that he was still making the wine. The winery still exists. I think his wife now makes the wines. And yeah, I just wanted to taste the stuff that meant so much to so many people. And this year I'm going to. And I think this is probably a really interesting Grenache. I don't really know a lot about it, but it has 12.5 or 12.7% of alcohol. It's from McLaren Vale, a really hot climate in Australia. Usually those McLaren Vale Grenaches tend to be really big and concentrated and alcoholic, and this is the exact opposite. So yeah, I'm looking forward to tasting this and just kind of thinking of Taras. I mean, not really thinking of him because I don't really know him, but getting to know him, even though he's not really here. But his wine is still here. You know, that's what wine is able to do. Just like music, it's able to transport the philosophy, the thoughts of somebody through time to someone else, so that that person gets to know the other person without having ever met that person. You know, every year I go to Piedmont, pretty much consistently every year I'm there. And I really love the wines. I do really enjoy them. I taste them quite often, but this year I want to dive more deeply into the classics. So this is the 2015 Barolo Busia from Aldo Conterno, one of the top wineries in the region. One really great site for producing Barolo. And yeah, I think after 10 years, this is probably the right time to open the first bottle of the batch that I have. You know, Barolo has this reputation for being this extremely age-worthy wines, and it can age, but I actually enjoy my Barolo more if it's like 10 to 20 years old rather than 30 to 40 years old. I think even the top stuff isn't that much better after 30 years in bottle. I wouldn't want to drink this right away. I mean, this shouldn't be consumed young, but 10 to 20 years I think is a good drinking window for really good Barolo. At that point, the wines tend to be a little rounder, the tannins are less harsh, the acidity is more integrated, and the aroma is more complex. There's ripe fruit, but there's also kind of spice character coming through, a little bit of dried fruit character, the floweriness, the tar aroma. So quite a lot to kind of dip your nose into. Talking about age-worthy wines, this is definitely going to be one of the wines I open this year. It's the 1996 Chateau Léoville Barton from Bordeaux. This is actually the bottle I bought on auction at Ideal Wine while I was sitting in the first class lounge in Bangkok. I really have high hopes for this wine. 1996, great vintage, Léoville Barton, great producer, and Bordeaux is really able to age for a long time. Not endless aging, but you can age those wines for a long time and still really enjoy it. They get more complex. They are really reliable when it comes to aging, as long as you age them properly. Of course, if you keep a bottle like that on your kitchen counter, this is not going to age well. But if you keep it in a good cellar, you'll really be able to enjoy it in the far distant future. I have the feeling that Bordeaux is experiencing a bit of a comeback right now. I mean, there was a period when Bordeaux wines were not really that hot. Many sommeliers decided to take them off their list or not sell them anymore as much because they just felt that the wines were too expensive. And well, right now it feels like Bordeaux doesn't really go through the best period when it comes to market demand. So they are doing more to get people excited about the wines again. And I think there's so much to be excited about when it comes to Bordeaux. I really love the region. I've been there many times. I actually lived there for a bit as well. And yeah, it's just a really special place producing really amazing wines. And producing amazing wines at every price bracket, really. I mean, there's like the top-notch stuff that is very expensive, but there's also a lot of really great wines in a more affordable category. And then there's also really cheap Bordeaux, and some of it actually can be quite decent. I mean, you can buy good Bordeaux for €5. I mean, it's good, not stuff that I would want to drink, but stuff that you could drink if you wanted to. Last but not least, I have 2 fortified wines because I want to drink more fortified wines in 2025. I mean, fortified wines are just great. You should drink more fortified wines. Just a glass, but yeah, drink them. One of the wines I definitely want to drink is the Tio Pepe Fino Dos Palmas. The Dos Palmas comes from selected barrels. The wine was aged for an extended period under a floor layer. That's also why it's so golden, fairly dark in color. And it is bottled without filtration and fining. So you get all of that aromatic complexity there. I tasted that wine before and it's just amazing. I mean, it's just so deep and complex. Yeah, just such a joy. And on top of that, this is just another example of what white wine from Spain can look like. I mean, this is fortified white wine, but it's still Spanish white wine and it's delicious. The other one is the 2001 Graham's Quinta dos Malvedos Vintage Port from Portugal. Opening an aged vintage port is such a joy, and I'm really looking forward to tasting this. I think after 24 years, this will be right in its drinking window. And I'm just going to kind of pull out the cork, or maybe even get my port tongs out and open it, and then have a glass or two with my wife, probably. I think this half bottle size is perfect when it comes to port. Port is rich. This has 20% of alcohol, so there's quite a lot of alcohol there. And the whole bottle is kind of daunting. I mean, if you have a bigger group of people, it works. But if it's just you and another person, it's just difficult to go through it in one sitting. So yeah, having half a bottle is just perfect. Open it, drink a couple of glasses, maybe keep another glass for the next day, and just enjoy yourself. And those wines are so much fun and bring so much joy. I think the great thing about this is also you can just keep it in the cellar indefinitely almost. I mean, this is 24 years old, but I'm not worried at all that it's at the end of its drinking window. I think it will keep for a long, long time. But it won't, because I'm going to drink it this year. All right, 15 wines that I'm going to consume this year. There will be more, I'm pretty sure about that, but all of those bottles will be opened this year. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, then please like it down here, subscribe to my channel if you want to follow me throughout the year. Not opening those bottles. I don't think I'm going to open those bottles on camera, but I'm going to open many bottles this year on camera. My question of the day is, what are the wines that you want to open this year? Let me know down below in the comments, but whatever you do, stay thirsty.